I hired artists to redesign the AI Pokemon from the earliest episodes of the Custom Pokémon Series. If you've been watching this channel for the last year and a half, then you know that we've gone through some serious upgrades. I mean, I used to not even have a mic. I would just go into my car and yell into my phone. Then I did have a mic, but it was terrible. My shelves were completely empty. I had a bowl cut, and I used a game show announcer voice for like no reason. Okay, I still do that. But of course, the biggest upgrade that this series has seen was going from using AI to generate what the recipient's Pokemon would look like, to today where I have the best team of Fakemon artists in the world bringing to life our results. And I've worked with this team to create the last 793 Fakemon that you've seen across my video. Yes, I did count them. And it's seriously been so amazing, especially recently. We've been able to do things like sprout entire Pokemon regions out of nowhere. And any idea I have for the Custom Pokemon series can come to life. Like a water type with a different evolution for every Subnautica Leviathan, boom, there it is. A rock type with a different evolution for every single evolution stone in the game, boom. A starter trio for every single state in the US, boom, boom, boom. I don't even have to use AI for the backgrounds anymore because we've been able to make custom backgrounds for every custom Pokemon at a weekly pace, which is seriously the coolest thing ever. Of course, the further we expand the series and the more grand the scope of our projects become, the AI Pokemon only feel more and more left behind. So for today's video, I figured it would be the perfect way to celebrate how far we've come by taking all of these old AI concepts and remake them to see what they would look like if they came out in an episode today. I really hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's get into it. Shrubcub is a normal grass-type bear Pokemon inside of a clay pot, and its new version not only makes its color palette more in line with other grass types, but it also has a more dynamic pose, which shows off the fact that it's actually not growing out of the pot, but rather just like sitting in them. And while its evolution Furliage used to be on 4 legs, I actually thought it would be better to make it bipedal, as it better shows off its perfectly rectangular body, which is a reference to perfectly trimmed hedges, as well as making it a better transition into its final stage Grizzlon, which now has a much more friendly demeanor as well as small flowers growing on its body. But that's not all, because while we're going through and redesigning these Pokemon, I figured it only made sense to also upgrade them. Introducing Grizzlon's unkempt form. In my fan-made game, this form is what Grizzlon would turn into if its friendship was low, as its now overgrown exterior will mirror the player's lack of care for the Pokemon. And in this form, Grizzlon does have increased offenses thanks to its many sharp protruding branches. However, its wound up leaves make it much slower. Jabag is a possessed boxing speed bag that seeks revenge against all of those who used to hit it. And while the new version does keep this wacky theme, it now has a much darker color palette as well as some recognizable eyes, as we decided that giving it similar eyes to Ghastly could imply some hidden lore of a Ghastly possessing a speed bag before absorbing all the torment the bag went through and becoming a vengeful spirit. And its evolution Bagchi was once an empty-looking rectangle, but its new version has a ton more personality with this slender, ghoulish appearance, black eye, and ripped open middle section, which resembles an open mouth, and the sand falling from the inside resembling a ghostly tongue. Flamenco is a fairy fire-type flamenco dancer. And while the new version does sport the same color palette, its feathers are now much more in line with the outfits that actual flamenco dancers wear. And its evolution Pymenko sports a flaming dress, which has now been turned into more expressive wings, allowing Pymenko to strike passionate poses just like the moves a flamenco dancer would hit. Snorlax is a Convergent Snorlax that was forced to hunt for its food instead of eating leftovers like its lazy Cantonian counterpart. And its new version keeps the same long claws and camouflage body that it uses to rip its way through the jungle and demolish foes, while also looking a lot more like the original Snorlax, making it a much more clear Convergent evolution. And we also gave it a new Gigantamax form, which, just like Snorlax's Gigantamax form, has an earth theme, with the tufts of jungle moss growing on its body resembling continents. Vampac is a dark flying type bird Pokemon that sleeps upside down just like a vampire bat, a theme that is much more clear in its redesign because we gave it a much more anguished and mysterious appearance. And its evolution Draculot is based on a Dracula parrot, and not only does the new version look more like the actual parrot that it's based on, but it also has this really cool plumage around its neck, which is a reference to the Victorian outfits that Count Dracula is often depicted in. Gastroid is a cosmic rock type Convergent Ghastly, and the new version fixes the problem that the original had where it looks nothing like the real Ghastly, while still keeping that epic meteor theme. Its evolution Hommet now looks much cleaner and more like other Convergent Evos. And Ging Galaxy went from being a crazy design that looks nothing like a Pokemon to a just as crazy but more realistic looking apocalyptic meteor. And we even gave it a Mega evolution, which turns the two disconnected arms of regular Mega Gengar into two chunks of floating space debris that make Mega Ging Galaxy 3 times the world-ending threat. Yarnsect is a bug fairy type spider that uses its silk to sew. And the new version keeps that same wholesome energy while also sporting 2 pin cushions for ears. And its evolution, Grantula, is a master of sewing little sweaters to give to other Pokemon. And its new version is even better at conveying this theme, as its new slender appendages much more resemble sewing needles at a first glance. I think Camfry is really rough, because like many comments pointed out at the time, this just looks like a Convergent Horsey, even though it's not. So we decided to listen to you all by making this redesign a new Convergent Horsey named Camsey, which still has this darker color palette to go along with the fact that this Pokemon lives at the bottom of the ocean. And instead of evolving into Kelquatic, it now evolves into Keldra, a Pokemon whose blazing wings light up the ocean floor in flashes of orange light as it darts across the void at lightning speed. And instead of evolving into Drakur, it evolves into Drakingdra, a Pokemon that's such a powerful swimmer that legend says it once pulled the chariots of the ocean god Poseidon. And this was the same theme that the original had, but we decided to cement it with this version even further by giving it a brand new Mega Evolution, which sees its wings roar to a new larger size, as well as summoning 2 Keldra to swim alongside it, bringing its swimming speeds to a new height that cannot be surpassed by any creature in the sea or on land. Gustike is a very unique Pokemon, as it's entirely just made of living air. And for the redesign, we gave it a subtle but impactful change that actually implies a lot of lore. You see, we added this dark sphere in the middle of its body, which is actually the entire Pokemon, with all the air around it being generated from the rapid spin of this mysterious sphere. And while its evolution Tornado was more of the same, we changed it to further emphasize the living sphere, as it's now peeking out from the swirling darkness. And its final stage, Hurricana, is a giant living storm, which now has even greater implications in its new orb, as the storm is now so large it's completely contained and protected the orb inside its body, essentially making it indestructible. And speaking of lore, Marmy has absolutely none. It's just a small normal dark type Marmot Pokemon that wants to fight everything it sees. And for the redesign, we emphasized the scowl, which now even further captures the phrase, "Come at me, bro." And Maulmot is a Pokemon that literally goes to the top of the highest points it can find before hurling insults at anything it sees and goading them into a fight. And this new version has a more bulky design so it can better absorb the hits that it's so desperately asking for. But more than that, this Pokemon's need for battle is now so strong that it was noticed by the distant evil Cosmic Legendary, who corrupted Maulmot, infusing it with the Cosmic type and sending it on a mission to start beef across the universe, as it now uses intergalactic portals to travel to faraway lands before challenging the strongest inhabitants to a battle for the fate of their planet. Hayjari is a creepy looking water ghost type that honestly doesn't look much like a Pokemon at all. For its new version, somehow keeps that same creepy otherworldly appearance, as it's based on the yokai of despair Bake Kujari, while also still feeling a lot more in the realm of Pokemon. Camalanche is a rock ice type camel Pokemon with a mountain on its back, and its new version has loads more personality with this longer neck and clouds forming around the tip of its icy teeth. And its corrupted form changes its mountain to a dark parrot, which only feels more alive now that it's gotten this giant upgrade to its color and composition. Moaimon is a very silly Pokemon whose whole backstory is just a troll, where it ends up turning into a giant Easter Island face based on handsome Squidward. So for its redesign, we decided to make it look more mischievous, while also upping the handsome Squidward-ness of its Mega Evolution. And yes, it is Mew. Clarret is a fire-type starter Pokemon, whose new version has a longer body to lean more into the ferret, which the Pokemon is based on. And its evolution, Warpin, is a fire cosmic type and sports a very crazy-looking tail, which is now much more beautifully used, as it's now a mesmerizing cosmic flame that constantly billows down its head and back. And its final stage, Galilei, is a being of pure cosmic pyrotechnic, which is only enhanced by its new vibrant color palette and head, which more resembles a shooting meteor, making the length of its body feel even more like the blazing trail of a falling star. Myself and the artist Pierre Rickachu agreed that Hydrina honestly ended up with a pretty perfect concept. So for the new design, we basically just cleaned up its slim fishbone hyena theme, and I think it turned out amazing. In fact, I would go ahead and say that this Pokemon is a shoo-in for my fan-made game. The only problem is, as it stands now, this Pokemon could probably only be available towards the midpoint of the game. So we actually decided to give it a new pre-evolution named Scraqua, which could be caught closer to the beginning. However, it would seem I'm not the only one who took notice of Hydrina, as it appears to have also caught the attention of the distant evil Cosmic Legendary, who corrupted Hydrina, infusing it with the Cosmic type and causing the bone-like structures on its body to roar with life, as its once canine body is now void of life, and its husk is now piloted by the monstrous bone jaw, giving this Pokemon the full spectrum of both cute and terrifying. Caution is a steel poison type that's a living potion cauldron. However, for the new new version, we figured it would be a much cooler theme to make the potion itself the Pokemon instead of the container. And while the old middle stage Elixir doesn't really feel like a middle stage, the new version perfectly captures the awkward body type that a middle stage is supposed to have. Now, the final stage Cauldron is fine, but it's missing something. How about we give it a giant ladle weapon, which it can use to both sling magical brews at opponents or bash them over the head if times get desperate. And you know what's even better than one giant ladle club? Mega Evolution with 2 giant ladles. But that's not even the coolest part, because easily my favorite part about this new design is the color palette, because it's the same color palette as the Mega Evolution symbol. So it implies that the Mega Evolution energy actually got mixed up with the substance that makes up Coldrite's body, powering up its liquid and physical form. Solar Bear is a concept I adore because I just love the idea of an ice psychic type having a constantly moving Aurora Borealis on its neck like a mane. But with the new version, we actually trim the mane down, because while the old evolution Borealis just had a little more of a mane than its pre-evo, the new version now has a large, constantly roaring Aurora Borealis on its neck, which would be a dazzling visual in a 3D Pokemon game. Titarus is a steel electric type legendary Pokemon who looks nothing like a Pokemon. But somehow Pierre Rikachu was able to turn it into this design, which is much more in the realm of Pokemon, while still managing to fit its really complex lore into the mix. You see, Titarus is an ancient guardian built by a technologically advanced civilization to protect against outside threats, until one day when it was infected with a strange virus that turned Titarus against what it once protected. And what's cool is we actually turned this virus into a new Pokemon, which is a pure electric type named Rathus, a strange creature that appears to be a hard drive infected by an unknown, which when combined with Titarus will cause it to transform into its ancient Wrath mode, a rampaging terror that trades in a chunk of its defenses to have much higher offenses than its base form. But be careful, because once you transform this Pokemon, there is no transforming it back, making the corruption of this once great guardian a permanent decision. Ceratops is a rock-fire type fossil Pokemon based on a Triceratops, and the new version keeps that same interesting bright red color palette, while also adding a new design feature of the volcanic funnel on its nose, which would constantly pour out the excess heat produced by its body. And its evolution, Volcasaur, was a bit too complex for a Pokemon, so we turned it into this much more realistic evolution that still keeps that same fiery energy. But if you think this version is too toned down from the original, don't worry, because we also gave it a new Mega Evolution, which now sports a constantly active volcano on its back, a concept that has never ever been seen in Pokemon before. Please don't look into that. Sparkit is a dark fire type baby puma Pokemon, and its new version looks less like a knockoff Litten, and now has a ghostly blue candle on its tail, which it would use to guide lost travelers through the jungle at night. And its evolution, Pluma, has the lore that it's rarely ever seen by humans because it's so good at hiding. However, its redesign is much better at conveying this, because it's much more stealthy looking, and its once roaring flames have been traded out for a pale lantern. YouTube thinks that you'll like this video of some other Pokemon we've made, so if you like today's video, make sure to check out that one. As always, huge thank you to all the artists that made today's Pokemon come to life. They can all be found in the description, so make sure to go check them out. Bit of a different video today, but I personally found it super fun seeing all these old designs come back to life. But now it's time to get back to making some more Fakemon, so I'll see you in the next episode, but until then, peace.